Welcome back to the Own Your Good podcast. This is Dave again, and I am excited to be with a friend that I haven't talked to or seen for a really long time. He's done a lot of interesting things. He's moved around a little bit, and as I talk with different people and as I see the audience of this podcast growing and changing, and most of the audience is in North America, but there are some pockets that are starting to develop in different parts of the world, and so I don't know culturally and, the different experiences that people have in different places in India and different parts of Europe, what it is that people are looking for. And maybe this is kind of a universal thing where people are trying to figure out what it is that they are worth, what it is that they're supposed to be doing. So welcome to all of the new listeners. If you want to connect with us, we're on Instagram at the Own Your Good podcast. And it would be awesome to hear maybe what you're taking from this if you're in a different part of the world, or maybe what it is that you're looking for, what it is that you maybe have questions about. So look us up there, and we'd love to interact with you and connect with you. So welcome, Spencer Terry, to the Own Your Good podcast.
Thanks, Dave. Good to be with you.
So we know each other from many, many years ago, and we weren't necessarily friends like hanging out and double dating and things like that in high school, but we were in some similar classes in high school together. Yeah. But I guess I'd like to hear your story, where you are now and how you got there, and what are some of the things that you feel like you've learned about yourself and what it is that you're good at, what it is that you love.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's the world's a crazy place, right? I mean, when I heard from you, I was like, I know this name from somewhere. And as soon as you connected the dot, I was like, oh, this is totally it.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. It's for me, I don't know the why, but I don't really spend a lot of time with a lot of folks from high school.
Yeah.
It's probably because I've lived all over the country, and I spend as much time as I can out of this country. And so, I don't know why, but I'm glad you reached out, and I totally love this podcast.
Cool.
So
Thanks.
Yeah, about owning our good, right?
Yeah.
You've done your thing, I've done my thing, and cheers for that.
What is it that you do? What is your title? What it is that you spend a lot of your time doing?
Well, I think probably the most greatest title I have is being a dad and a husband.
Yeah.
Those are both challenging and rewarding beyond limit. It's great. I have a 4-year-old daughter who, I for most of my life truly believed I wasn't interested in children. And for most of my life, up until 5 years ago, really, I was like, yep, I'm totally fine. I'm going to have I'll be married, maybe. Just kind of interested in doing my thing.
Yeah.
And that led me down a path, and, things changed, and here we are. So I love getting that side of me.
Yeah.
I'm also the general manager of one of the world's largest haunted attractions called Fear Factory Haunted House. It's located here in Salt Lake City. Most folks in Utah just think of it as that really cool, scary place. They have no idea that it's globally ranked one of the top 10 in the world.
Wow.
Haunted houses are usually, you and I grew up when we'd go to like an old haunted house that was in an abandoned shopco.
Yeah.
And no one ever thought that a $5 million purchase in a 6-building facility downtown Salt Lake City would grow to become one of the best well-known haunted houses in the world.
Yeah. So I
get to
do have
every day.
That is awesome. I do have a couple questions about that. As I investigate and talk with a lot of different people, do you think that haunted houses are really big in certain places and not in others, like in parts of the world?
Yeah, I get asked that all the time. I also sit on the board of directors for the Haunted Attraction Association. We're part of an $8 billion economy for Halloween. And as a board of directors, we get asked that all the time. Like, what makes Utah so awesome? Because Rocky Point Haunted House also came from Utah, which is a legendary haunted house. It was, back in our day, it was like the heyday. So Utah's known for some really great haunted houses. Nightmare on 13th is a great one. They've been around. They just celebrated 30 years. And so I think, I don't know the why. I think part of it is culture. I certainly would like to think that part of it is, is the altitude in the mountains, but that's just me because I'm biased and I love the mountains.
Yeah.
but I really don't know. There's certainly a culture here that I think allows for a little bit of leniency to do things different.
Yeah.
And
You mean
because
business
of that,
wise?
yeah, both business and personal. You look at Utah's culture in general, being part of the LDS, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that religion.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a space that's like, we stay on the path, and that's kind of the Utah culture thing. And then there's a couple of times where you're going to get off the path and get a little bit adventurous, and you're going to go do something different and fun. And, for us, we're all of those things because Fear Factory's only open. Even 2020, here we are in COVID.
Yeah.
We only opened 28 days, but in those 28 days, I'll make over $1 million.
Wow.
So it's pretty, to be able to, it takes all year to plan for it.
Yeah.
But I think in general, Utah just loves to get out and have fun. And whether it's a mountain or it's a haunted house,
yeah.
It's kind of how we roll.
That is cool. So where would you say is probably the second? I don't know that Utah is the top. We have one of the top 10 haunted houses in the world. Where else is known for that?
Oh yeah, I definitely would not place Fear Factory as the number one in best of the best of the best in the world. But there's some great ones. Netherworld, it's down in Georgia, just up from Atlanta. Netherworld, Ben Armstrong runs a really great show there. You've got a couple in Illinois that are pretty great. There's a few out west, farther in California. The LA Hayride is very well known. And then, of course, you've got some really great ones. Ocean Park in China is pretty great. I spent probably 3 months with a firm that was looking to build Fear Factory 2.0 in Kuwait.
Ooh.
There's some really great attractions, both theme park based and just entertainment based.
Yeah.
So it's been really cool, and it's been really fun to be part of this industry. I certainly, if you would have asked me in high school,
yeah,
that, hey, Spence, did you know that when you're 40 years old, you're going to be running one of the best haunted houses in the world? And I'd probably spit my chocolate milk out.
Yeah.
Because there's just, that would have been a dream come true. And for me, it was all about all of the steps that I took to get to where I have been. Jobs that I loved or didn't love have got me to a place where I absolutely am just in love with what I do.
Yeah. So is that something that you say you plan year round? Are there any other things, projects, companies that you work with or for that take up any more of your time, or is that it?
This is it. I average about 70 hours a week.
Wow.
Off season. On season, I literally live there. We have a nanny who pretty much lives at our home for 2 months, sometimes 3 months out of the year. And my wife and my daughter really don't get to see me. I come home and sleep as much as I can, but I'm on property, and it's kind of one of those things where you sacrifice a lot. It's one of those jobs where I have a lot of freedom. We have almost 300 staff on payroll.
Yeah.
And it's a great, great company, but it does demand a lot for about 6 months out of the year.
Oh, for
the
sure.
Good news is the other 6 months out of the year, that drops down a little bit. I work from home most of the time. I try and get out camping. I can get some work done up in the high Uintas. So that's the beauty of it, is I get to be able to do my work, which is everything from, the technology and the marketing side and kind of lining up vendors all the way to mentoring our team and making sure that our team has a place to call home.
Yeah.
We all want a job that fulfills what we want to do in life. And
for sure. Fear
Factory really helps make that happen in so many ways.
That is cool. I know that seasonally it's super busy. When I had my restaurant in South Salt Lake, we were just a block or two away from, it's been so long. Was it Castle of Chaos on 33rd?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Castle was on 33rd. They're now down on 80th and State.
Yeah. So I did some, some sandwiches for their crew a few times.
James is a great guy. He still owns Castle.
That's cool. So yeah, I've seen walking through it during the day. There's a lot of stuff that goes on with a lot of different things. The presentation, the stagecraft, the technology, and like you say, marketing, how to let people know that you're open for the days that you are open, and that's it. That's a big deal.
Yeah, there are so many things. Even you think about the fact that you're essentially hiring and firing 300 people every 9 months. And so that makes things pretty tricky as far as the online, getting things onboarded and payroll. But then we've got about 15 staff that are on deck most of our year, 10 that are full-time year-round, and that helps us to really kind of keep an eye on things. But yeah, you're right. Like, we're producing everything from makeup and masks, costumes, all the way to training and building our leadership and mentoring them. We usually fly our team every year. We take about 10 or 15 people to Transworld, which is the International Haunted Attraction Association convention. It's a world. You can buy a $5 skull, and you can buy a $500,000 40-foot dragon that opens a 50-foot wingspan and breathes fire. It's pretty crazy. It's an amazing industry.
That is so cool. And they probably love to see the ideas. I mean, if you're creative and that's your space, like you say, the sky's the limit. Anything that you can create that will give people what they're looking for, that temporary escape or that excitement, that's awesome to have that level of, I don't know that freedom is the right word, but there's so many possibilities.
Yeah, it's pretty open. And I think the cool part, one of the things that I loved about, part of this whole, in fact, this whole podcast is trying to figure out, what you're good at and owning that, right?
Yeah.
And I think for me, my whole life, I had been taught that creative meant art.
Yeah.
Creative equaled art. And what I have realized is that, and let's not lie, I am the worst artist. I mean, go ask, sheesh, I don't know where Lowell is, or Lovell, who's our, I don't know who our yearbook teacher was.
Yeah.
Reed Loveland. That's it.
Loveland,
Reed Loveland. And they'll all attest to it. I am not artistic at all. 0%. If there was a negative scale, I'd be in the negative.
Yeah.
But I create logistical operations.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting part that for me, I never really thought of it as a creative space. And in fact, people tell me all the time, I'm like, I hire talent for being creative. That's why we have a makeup team. I have a costume team. I have a logistics team. I have all those other teams because I know I'm not good at it. And every time I say that, they're like, dude, you're the one creating this place. Like, you're the one that helps make this operation happen.
Yeah.
And between our 5 owners and myself, we each bring a different type of creativity to the table. And I would never have thought of creative in that space. And so that's been really fun to kind of think outside the box about how do I create something that really isn't art at all, but it allows other people to do their art. And that's been really fun. That's
true. Your creative is producing the opportunity for other people to excel at what they're good at. You have the vision, you have the big picture, you have what each building or room or scene is supposed to be. And if the people have understood you, you both are successful.
Absolutely. Yep. And there's, I think a lot of times people go to a haunted house or they even hear of a haunted house and like, oh yeah, no, I drive by that place all the time. You can't even get me on that property. That place freaks me out.
Yeah.
The reality is that a really good haunted house is balanced between the thrill of whether it's a scare or being up high or being in an abandoned building, whatever that thrill is. Then the second part is the fun. It's all about people always say, I don't like going to haunted houses because I don't like being scared. And my immediate reply is, that's because you came with one other person as a 2-person date, didn't you? And of course they're like, yeah. Because the fun part is watching other people get scared. Like, that's the funny part about it. Cause it's like, that's why there's this whole psychology about why haunted houses are actually the one thing that should have been open during COVID, because it allowed everyone to just let go of their stress.
Oh yeah.
And of course, then the third part, you've got thrill, you've got the actual fun part. And the third is the scare. It's actually not the first reason or the second reason.
Yeah.
It's the third, because people have to have, there's a psychology component to how do we make the scare happen. And there's rooms that are really cool and super elaborate and decorated. We'll spend $100,000 on a new build just for one small area. I mean, there's 13 different massive spaces in this facility.
Yeah.
So they're really well decorated, but then there's other spaces that are going to be those really high impact, tag team, multiple component scares. But then there's other things that you're like, wow, this is the coolest room ever.
Yeah.
And then the next room, you're like, I just peed my pants. Like,
yeah.
So it kind of has there. It's like a roller coaster ride. You gotta have the fun and the thrill together. And so that's what makes, I think, haunted houses really great for a lot of people, is they're one of those components, and that's why they go.
Yeah. Now I'm curious. This just popped into my mind as an English teacher. My wife and I just finished watching a series on Amazon Prime Video. The series is called Dickensian, and the premise of this 10-episode series is that all of the characters, or all of the main characters from Dickens' stories, Oliver Twist, Miss Havisham, all of these characters from totally different books are in the same world, and they interact with each other. And somebody came up with the idea to create these connections, and there's a murder mystery. Who killed Bob Marley, and why did Bob Marley come back to haunt Scrooge? And there's all of this interplay between the stories. When I'm curious if haunted houses are segmented so that each part is different, or if there's a running storyline throughout, or if it changes by year, or if that's why some are successful and some aren't. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll back that question up. So because I sit on an international board of directors, I see things from a global perspective as far as what haunted houses are doing. Every culture is different. So, in the Middle East, for example, there's some really great haunted houses in Abu Dhabi, and their storyline is different, obviously, than a U.S. storyline, or even the U.K., for example. And so everyone's kind of got their different feel. I think sometimes it changes. If you're a haunted house in the middle of the woods, you're probably going to pick up on kind of some of that whole Blair Witch, forestry stuff. For most haunted houses, take Nightmare on 13th, for example. It's, been around forever here in Utah. Most of us grew up going to. And Nightmare they must have 60 different rooms. I think like every room has got to be, 20 by 20 feet. But every room is a different room. Like you go from like the vampire cave to a mine shaft to an Egyptian tomb. Like, so they're just drastically different. And it feels like every room you're kind of getting transported to a different. And some people like that. At the factory, at Fear Factory, our storyline is that you're essentially in an abandoned factory, and every part of that has some kind of fear component tied to it. So if it's a fear of heights, you go all the way up to the top of that tower. Most people have no idea. You go up 6 stories, you walk over a catwalk, and you better believe we're going to make sure that if you're not afraid of heights, you will be by the time we're done.
Oh, gee.
You go underground. There's 2 underground passages. There's a vampire area, just because most people love it. I don't know why, but everyone loves the vampires, myself included. And we have different elements as well. So there's a fire space where you have a cabin that's on fire. It literally smells like charred ash and burning bodies. We have a swamp that you walk into pretty much what looks and feels like you're in 3 feet of water, and creatures can pop up underneath that haze and that swamp. And so you don't know if they're coming from the top, from the side, from the bottom. And I think that's the fun part. Some people are afraid of clowns. Some people are afraid of spiders. Some people are afraid of heights. And our job is to incorporate all of that into one entertainment attraction. And I think that's part of what makes Fear Factory so big. Is it is one of the biggest, and it allows us to do some really great things on a really big macro scale.
That's cool. Have you seen any kind of data or trends with specific things that go up or down, like with It, the movie, being popular?
Yeah, you certainly would think that with take It, for example, that people would be more freaked out about clowns. There's maybe, in general, especially our market, there's maybe a 1.5%, maybe 2% maximum lift on any given year. Overall, people are innately afraid of whatever it is that they grew up being afraid of. So, typically there's 2 fears that all babies, all humans, or as I like to say when I'm teaching my classes, all humanoids, we're all we're afraid of two things, and that's falling from heights
Yeah.
and loud noises. Those are the two things that for some reason all of us seem to share a common denominator of. Everything else is learned. Some people are afraid of spiders, some people aren't.
Yeah.
Some people can go right up to Ronald McDonald, and other people are like, yeah, no, hard pass.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting. Everyone's conditioned in their own way, which I think has a lot to do about, that then that's our job of making sure that the variables of each scare factor have to be really fine tuned. You've only got 5 seconds, 6, 7 seconds max to do the scare.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to tell a story, create a backstory, immerse the customer, and create the scare all within those 7 seconds.
Wow.
So it's pretty tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you learn all this? Where did you get?
Oh man, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm telling you.
I mean, you had to have, because that's a customer service experience. That's how do I make my customer happy?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, props to my father, because really that's part of where it started. The family story is I was 7 or 8 years old. It was trick-or-treating time. We were, as a family, we were getting ready to go trick-or-treating and dressing up. And I was like, screw this. This is really stupid. I'm just going to just hide in the bushes and scare people. And my dad, of course, being a great dad, just was totally giddy watching me scare people. And I was the fat kid in the candy store. I was like, let's do this. And at the time I was a little fat kid, and it was like, I'm good. Let's do it. And so so the next year my dad was like, cool. All right. Do you want to do that trick-or-treating thing? And I was like, nah, Dad, no, I know what I like now. And of course, I think there's some fun of it too. Like I remember elementary kids be like, oh, I remember your house trick or treat was so cool. And so, now, my dad, back in the day, he built a coffin. He must have spent $100-200 building a stupid plywood coffin. And if, back, 40, 30 years ago, very few people, people would put up a little bat that would go, ee!
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like it is now.
Right. And now, now home haunting is like an actual profession, which is really interesting. There's actually consultants that'll come out and will spec out your house and do a full home haunt analysis for you. It's pretty crazy.
Wow.
So, but yeah, and so that's been really cool. In fact, this amazing magazine that goes to most entertainment venues called Seasonal Entertainment. They send their magazine. It goes out to every theme park, every entertainment venue, every theater, every haunted house, anything that has to do with seasonal stuff. And they just had me. They asked me to be to write a story about kind of the beginnings of Halloween, and for folks who aren't able to do Halloween this year because of COVID, what are the memories associated with that? And it was really cool to kind of like do some some flashbacks.
Yeah.
Where things all started, and I think that's the cool part. Thanks to my dad, he built that coffin, and it was just downhill from there.
Yeah.
And every year it got better and bigger, and everyone loved it more and more, and it allowed me to kind of find a groove. It was fun, and before then, before long, I had friends who were like, "Hey, can I come over to your place and scare people on Halloween? What do you think?" And that was it. And it became something that I realized can be both fun and rewarding for both me as the kid who wanted to scare, but also for the people that were like, yeah, I'm not scared of that house. I'm going to go up and do this. And then it's like, oh, you got me. And that's the fun part, I think. And that, of course, grew to learning how to take care of people in my space. That's the reason why I chose hotels as a profession. Pre-haunted houses is because I loved being in that service component. I loved being able to do things for other people, and and certainly in high school, you'll remember that I was like, if I could spend any time in the office, in the main office, I would do it because class sucked.
Yeah.
I love my teachers to death. I love all of you. In fact, I still have some memorabilia. I have John Parks' hall pass still. Remember those big round hall passes?
I do.
I still have one.
Wow.
And my teachers really, sometimes people say like, who's that one person that like really made an impact? There isn't one. I mean, there's hundreds.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty, and props, Dave, for being a teacher, because, for so long I wanted to be a teacher, and I realized education wasn't my thing, but I knew I was going to make an impact on people's lives somehow.
Yeah.
And that teaching was one of many ways, but I had to figure that out.
Well, you mentioned teaching and having workshops with your employees, with your team.
Yeah.
It's the same. When I was in the restaurant, I had the exact same feeling showing people recipe or procedure as I do with writing. It's the same thing. It's the same buzz. And I think people have multiple of those. It's just which one are you going to focus on?
Totally. Yeah. I would agree.
So you had a lot of experience with hotels and hospitality there. I agree. There is something about giving somebody a really awesome experience, whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah, it does something to you. I think innately, biologically, as humans, I think we're hardwired to, we all know that we're social creatures.
Yeah.
And so I think being able to be of value, it certainly is validating, but to be able to teach and pass on, whether it's an oral lesson or a written lesson or a learning lesson, all of those things, every culture, we all share these same connection points. And so it's been, it's the reason why I love traveling so much. I mean, I tried to spend so much time out of this country because I feel like I've been so Americanized, and I probably sounds bad, but like, I feel like I've got who I am as an American, and who I am as, this white kid that grew up on the, on the bench in a pretty decent suburb. But I want more, and I want to figure out, how do I make an impact way, way bigger than just me? And it's been really cool, to be able to make friends. And in fact, I just was FaceTiming with a friend of mine who lives just downtown Petra, in Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just talking about how things are there, and how COVID's impacted their tourism there, and what's happening in their families and government. And there's something really great for me about being able to connect. Maybe that's it. Connect. Period.
Yeah.
It's just connect. Like, sometimes I feel like I can be that bridge between dot A and dot B, and other times I'm one of the dots, and I'm learning from someone else. So I think there's some really great value there.
Definitely. So you've touched on a couple of, I think, critical points. We're social creatures, and inherently we are hardwired to connect and, I think, serve. I think help other people feel better about themselves, and maybe that's part of why some of us have a hard time, is we don't find opportunities to help other people. Maybe we don't feel like we're useful. And then that creativity, that ability to produce something, and I agree, creativity is oftentimes seen as art, music, but creative is coming up with any idea that is either entertaining or helpful or supportive or whatever. There's so many ways to be creative. So where do you think this industry is going? And I think we all hope that this COVID pandemic ends sooner than later, and hopefully vaccines and things will speed things up so that we can get back to normal. But where do you see things going with haunted houses, with entertainment, with tourism? And that could be locally, and that could be nationally too. Where do you think the future is in the next 5, 10, 20 years?
Hang on, let me turn on my crystal ball really quick. Try this sucker up. I'm privileged enough to be married to a doctor who understands the medical world, and is a PharmD. She does a ton of work in the medical world, both bedside and on the policy side for the University of Utah. And we talk all the time. I mean, almost every day there's a conversation about something related to COVID, especially during our operation. The fact that I was able to bring 45,000 people onto our property without a single COVID transfer back to Fear Factory.
Yeah.
In 28 days is pretty. It really makes you. It makes you appreciate that masks do work.
Yeah.
And whether you like them or not, there are certain things that we have to do to make things work. And this is one of them. Did we lose money this year? Oh my gosh, yeah, so much money. But at the end of the day, it's about market. I mean, we have customers that want us to open, and we have staff that want to come play. I think that's one of the other things we haven't talked about yet. We can probably get to it in a minute. Is the sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And hard. Most people have no idea how that culture works in a haunted house, but it is a very real. I would almost call it an element. It's like fire and water and earth and wind. There is an element of belonging that is tangible, which is really cool when you talk about like company culture.
Yeah.
But I think overall, yeah, it's just about, connect the dots and find those things that are going to work in whatever way that's going to be.
As the pandemic winds down, do you expect a bounce back over the next year or two? Things get really popular because people missed it so much?
Yeah. Sorry, I was choking on my chai.
You're good.
So do I think it's coming back? First things for, to answer that question, I do. I firmly believe that we have at least another year of this. Probably not as bad, not as scary, but I think masks are probably going to be a thing for a good year. I think it's I think it's just kind of going to be one of those things that we're all going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Hopefully, financially, we'll be able to figure out ways to for folks to be able to connect and socialize, since we are those social creatures. I think it is vital for us to be able to live and work and play inside of our own bubble. But there's a reason why villages were big, and there's a reason why villages always were connected to another village.
Yeah.
And so we have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so, do I think, what is that going to look like for us? I mean, even here we are, we're not even out of 2020 yet, and we already are building and getting ready for 2021. I mean, we added this massive addition between November and February 2019 to 2020, and of course, COVID hit at the end of February, early March, and we were like, well, we're either going to lose it or we're going to make it up.
Yep.
And we lost it. That's part of business. I mean, no one could have foreseen it happening, but there's adjustments that we're making to plan accordingly for 2021. And it is what it is. It's, I think, some folks, like restaurants or other businesses that are open, 365, they're able to have other dates to make up their money.
Yeah.
Even businesses that were given money from the federal government for stimulus for Q1 and Q2. There has not been a stimulus for Q3 or where we're located in Q4 in October, and who knows? So we may never make that money up. And so we're planning ahead of time. There's some really great silver linings that have come out of COVID, though. I think even helping kind of guide our industry. I've probably been on over 100 panels and podcasts and presentations and ways that I can connect not only our industry, but also kind of help them navigate through this space. And we were the first, back in May, we were the first haunted house to open during the pandemic in the world. And so everyone was watching us. We had Disney and Universal, we had haunted houses, we had theme parks, we had even zoos from other countries. They were like, we're watching, like, and share your contingency plan. I wrote this, massive 60-page contingency plan to kind of help us figure out what in the world we were doing.
Right. How to track problems
that's now been shared a million times over, and it's really cool to know that we had an impact as a company to be able to help people kind of navigate the process. So I don't know what it's going to look like, but whatever it is, I'll be ready for it.
Yeah.
So we have a really, really amazing team. We have a great leadership team. Our owners each bring to the table such a unique passion and skill set that I feel like we could all, we meet every week to really kind of jump through whatever hurdle and whatever hoop is lit on fire this week, and we jump through it all together, and it's been really cool.
That's neat.
But who knows?
That's good that you have that communication and that commitment to teamwork. I do want to go where you were talking about belonging and community. Having worked in the restaurant industry and other industries very similar to that, there definitely is a level of belonging. For a very short period, I worked in the video game retail industry, and you start to see, I don't know if stereotypes are the right word, or the archetypes of who people are that play video games. I think that's definitely changed a lot over the last 5 to 10 years. Would you say that there's a specific type of person that is attracted to working in a haunted house?
I would like to tell you yes. The reality is no. We have dentists, we have high school kids, we have moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, we have homeless kids, we've got people who are recently unemployed, we have people who are restaurateurs, they're engineers, they're flight attendants. It's a spectrum, and I think that's probably one of the cool things about what makes Fear Factory is the diversity. I'm a very huge advocate for making sure that social structures are in place, and that one of those elements certainly is diversity and inclusion, and making sure that people feel like they belong. And I think you probably see this both from a teacher, from a professional space, as well as from the students, is that the world is really good about telling you how much you suck.
Yeah.
And it's great at it. And it's almost like we're all kind of trained to look for the negative rather than uplift the positive. And so I have made that a firm passion about how I run a company, that it's really about space, and how do we create space for people to be like, you know what, I am going to give you one extra opportunity, or we are going to spend some extra time training and developing you, or we are going to do, whatever that is. There's always just one more step that I want to do, because I think in general, the world's really good about telling us what we're not good at. Mm-hmm. And so Fear Factory has created a culture, as if a lot of haunted houses, that's where you belong. Those are your peeps. And you're all really different. And it's kind of fun because you walk through the gate, and sure, you kind of bring that, people can see your clothing, or they're going to see what kind of phone you have. But the moment you get in a makeup chair and you become a monster, you're a monster with everybody else. And I don't care if you make $200,000 or you make $1,000. You're a monster, and you're there collectively as part of this bigger puzzle of we're our own puzzle piece to be able to connect this really beautiful picture in the end.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think there are. Even if you were to look at haunted house owners, it's shifting dramatically. You look at the people who have been kind of like the big knowledge pillars of an industry, and they're slowly they're making decisions to either leave their industry or they're passing on. But those people who are passing on are vastly different than their own beliefs and structures. And it's been really cool.
It's cool. It's almost like they have figured out what they actually want to do, and they're pursuing it, and they have the money to put into it, and they know that people love it, so people are willing to pay for it. I mean, that's probably the biggest, most challenging thing about starting a business or entrepreneurship in general, is figuring out what it is that people want and are willing to pay for.
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to prove to a bank that you actually will get them to do what you think they're doing.
Yeah.
Will they show up and give me their money?
Yeah. That's cool. So owners, managers, actors, security, anybody that has an interest in scare, and I think there's a ton of people, like you mentioned, that it's kind of a way to escape. It's a way to do something different from, and I don't want to say that life is mundane, but it kind of is, right?
Right. In many ways, yeah.
So what is a schedule like yearly. You're there full time year round, and you probably have a skeleton crew, your main team that is there year round.
Right.
I guess you have recurring employees. What is their schedule like? Does it start in August or earlier in the summer? When does the training and the acting start?
Yeah, so we have a construction crew that's headed up by one of our owners, and they are on property, I kid you not, every day. Myself and probably about 4 of us. I literally just looked at my calendar, and this Sunday was the first day that I literally did not do anything Fear Factory related since July 15th.
Wow.
It's I mean, like every day there is something happening, something going on. We may be closed. Maybe there's a film that's being shot. It could be a photo shoot that's happening. We could have a vendor that's on property. We could have an excavating team that's there getting ready for a new build. Something. There's always something.
Yeah.
So our construction team is on deck often, a lot. And our tech team is phenomenal. Keith, one of our owners, helps with kind of the macro side of things, and then a company here locally called Black Ops that kind of does a ton of shows and rigging. Think of like Cirque du Soleil riggers, and they do some just phenomenal work. And so they're our tech team, and every year they just knock it out of the park, and they're able to take what we have is this kind of concept or what we want to see happen and how to build that in a way that not only articulates the storyline, but also operationally allows for things like, you always want to scare your customers forward, not backwards.
Yeah.
If you do backwards, then they're going to bunch up. And that's one of the secrets of making sure that customers don't ever bunch up. And so, we do all of that. And then we have 2 makeup managers who just are phenomenal, Becky and Chelsea, and both of them are on deck every day. They're in our production lab getting masks ready or repairs or making costumes or creating props or weapons. We're launching an online store hopefully in about a year or 2, and that obviously there's a lot to get ready for that procurement, both in looking at how we're going to handle that whole component. So, yeah. And then we have a lot of our leaders. We have our management team who we consistently they're probably part-time throughout most of the year. We're working with them on a whole bunch of different things, and then by August. Really by July, we kind of kick up the marketing on getting ready for casting calls, and a lot of our staff, this year we did not have a financially successful year. Every year we have. COVID, obviously, because we had to reduce our occupancy by 50%, that translates to 50% revenue.
Yeah.
But we still paid our staff bonuses this year. Every single staff member that met only 3 requirements, it's like 70% of our staff got their bonus. And so the idea then is that in the next returning year, you don't have to come to our casting call. You can actually just show up if you already received your bonus and you're considered part of the family. And it literally is called a Fear family.
Yeah.
And you come in, and then we have a ton of new people who always show up, who want in on fun. And so we do some casting calls with them. We want to find out and make sure it's a good fit, just like any other job.
Sure.
If you don't love it, if you're not in it and it's not a good fit, it's not going to work out. So we want to make sure that we can do that the best way possible. And we do training, lots of training, lots of mentoring, lots of kind of both logistical and operational training, as well as tactical training, and making sure that, how are you in shape physically? It is probably one of the most physically demanding jobs I've ever had. You've got to be able to both use your diaphragm and both pronounce, but you also have to be able to move very quickly and be able to run and be in different areas, almost 2 places at the same time.
Yeah.
And that is something that a lot of folks have a hard time doing. So there's a lot. Yeah. It literally is year round. It's a lot of fun. It's that one thing where, people told me all the time, make sure that you find a job that you love so that when you get up in the morning, you don't feel like you're going to work. And
yeah.
It took me 30 years to find it, and I finally was able to create it and make it thanks to our owners that they completely believe in me and believe in what we've been able to do in the last couple of years. And we've almost doubled revenue since I came on property 5 years ago. So it's been really awesome to see us not only get past the $1 million mark. But I foresee us probably in the next 3 years, we'll probably hit the $2 million mark.
Yeah.
So really happy and pleased that, our team is phenomenal. It's definitely not a one-person show. It really does take all of us. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So you've obviously worked with a variety of people. You've worked with the big guys who are willing to risk money and time to make things happen. And you've worked with the people who think that they want to get into acting, or makeup is their thing, or prop and costume, with a ton of different skills. I don't know if you've thought about this, working with all of these different types of people, but let's say that you have somebody, and I think you've talked about coaching and giving people extra chances and things. What would you say to somebody, whether they're a high school student or maybe they're somebody our age who is mid-career and is like, this is terrible, what am I doing? What would you say to somebody who's trying to figure out what that is for them?
I think, just kind of thinking back to when I was in that space, I think number one is it's okay to be afraid. I remember the day I walked out of a job because I didn't believe in how they were treating their employees.
Yeah.
And for me as a director in that company, it reflected on me, and I was like, listen, boss, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I love the concept. I love the idea. But when it comes to the marching orders, we say one thing, but we treat our staff internally very different. And I'm not okay with that. And it was a hard decision. I was unemployed for 9 months, and my wife was like, what in the hell are you doing? But as we talked more about it, and she got it, she understood that, that is a core value of taking care of the people who take care of you.
Yeah.
It's one of my mantras of life. And so that fear of not having a job, the fear of figuring out the reality is that all of those things kind of disintegrated once I started focusing on what's next.
Ooh.
That's
brilliant.
Yeah.
That you're always going to experience some sort of hesitation, fear, anxiety about it. But sometimes you need that to be able to focus on the thing that you actually are worried about or care about.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I think that's, and to tie that back to haunted houses, it's part of what I love. Whenever I have someone who says, I'm deathly afraid of haunted houses, my deal that I make with them is I want them to come work for 2 nights. That's it. Just give me 10 hours of your day, 5 hours, 2 nights, and I'm going to flip this for you, and you can see just what's happening on the other end. And I promise that fear is going to disintegrate.
Yeah.
And sure enough, every time the deal is that if they're still not afraid, if they don't want to go to haunted houses and they're like, oh, I didn't really learn anything, the deal is I buy them dinner. Good news, I haven't bought dinner yet. So, and I've probably done it 20 times. It's been really cool to see how that happens. And so I think number one is just the fear. Number two, honestly, for me, is just surrounding yourself with the people who you feel are core components of what you want in life. I'm not going to lie. Like my wife jokes about it. She's like, you're kind of like the old codger. Like you're just this grumpy old dude. And the reality is that she's right. Like I purposely don't have a lot of people in my circle, but the ones that I do, we're talking like my friend list is 4 people, maybe 5. But those 4 or 5 people are people who I look up to. They're people who are mentors. They're people who would do anything for me, and I would do anything for them.
Yeah.
And I think in learning that quality versus quantity is not only a beautiful idea, but it's a survival tactic.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that makes me think of the high school kids who are feeling alone. They don't know what they are supposed to do, but maybe they love drawing or anything. If they surround themselves with, if they take time to spend time with the people who are doing that, that automatically lifts you, the person who is trying to figure that out, and gives an opportunity for somebody else to share what they've experienced as well.
Yeah. Find those common denominators, and realizing that, the world's really good about telling us that we suck. The caveat to that is that sometimes the world's right.
Yeah.
And there are times where we have to do some introspection and realize, you know what, maybe I need to work in, this area of my life, or I need to focus on listening more, or I need to focus on understanding money better, or whatever those skills are. Sometimes the world is always hinting us. And I think, for me, I'm such a hippie in a very root word. For me, I believe that the world is going to always give you opportunities. The question is whether or not you take them. And if you don't take them, if that's what you're supposed to learn, that opportunity is going to come back. So anytime someone says, "Oh, why am I learning this lesson again?" I always pause and I'm like, hold that thought. Do you want to talk? You want to go deep down the rabbit hole for a second? Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Because that's where I think most of my learning came from, was really kind of thinking about and pausing, and looking at both myself and what I wanted. What do I want to do? So, and I think, and for the high school kids that don't know what they're going to do in their life, that's okay. And hear me out. It is okay. I think, Dave, did you ever think you were going to be a teacher?
Never.
And I never in a million years thought that I would be running this place. I never thought that I would even go work for casinos and hotels. Like, I really never did. And so being able to kind of lean in to what is presented to you, it has a strange way of connecting that dot. It might be a year or two down the road and you're like, hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah.
And you look at it first and you're like, this is not what I want to do. And then 2 years later, you're like, man, this is the best decision of my life.
Yeah.
So,
it's totally true. You get into something thinking that you love it because there's something that you're good with, something that that you're good at or that you appreciate. Leaning into that, I agree 100%. That eventually, that might not have been the thing, but it puts you in the path to getting where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just another stepping stone at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, Spence, I really appreciate taking time talking to me today with your experiences in customer service and haunted houses, and sort of peeling back a little bit of what it is that makes them. I mean, the psychology of it is fascinating. We know that it's a safe place, or we think we know it's a safe place, but catwalks and, my hands are sweating thinking about some of those things. But I really appreciate you taking the time today, and hopefully whoever is listening, whether it's just because you have an obsession with the scary and haunted houses and movies, or whether it's you're trying to figure out what it is that you're good at, hopefully there is some tidbits here, some pieces that helped you to realize what it is that you need to do for yourself to pursue what it is that you like, to change the friend circle that you have, and whatever level you're at, to be okay with that. So thanks for listening. Have a great day. And remember that it takes a little bit of fear and anxiety to learn how to own your good. Thank you for joining me today on Own Your Good. I'd like to give a special thanks to Arches Audio. They are the ones that provided this awesome music. If you need anything for a project, I would go and check them out. They have a great selection of music and other services to help you with your creative projects. I hope that you found this valuable. If you enjoyed this episode and it did something for you, or you think somebody might benefit from it, please share this. It would mean a lot to me to help spread this positivity and this idea that people can change, improve, and ultimately own their good.